In the gleaming tower of one of the world's most powerful billionaires, a quiet janitor pushed a mop across the marble floors, unnoticed and underestimated. No one imagined that today, an impossible challenge would change everything. The billionaire, known for his arrogance and love of testing others, issued a dare: translate a mysterious phrase perfectly, or leave without a reward. Laughter echoed from the boardroom as eyes turned toward her, expecting failure. But what no one realized was that the janitor's mind was sharper than anyone could guess, and the choice she made next would shock the world, forever rewriting who held power in the room. She had always moved through the world quietly, a shadow in the grand halls of wealth and power. Every day the janitor's routine was the same: sweeping the gleaming floors, emptying the trash, and tidying spaces that others never noticed. The towering skyscraper she worked in was a symbol of excess, its glass walls reflecting ambition and arrogance. Yet within these opulent halls, she remained invisible, a reminder of the unseen labor that kept the empire running. Her life outside work was modest: a small apartment filled with second-hand furniture, a kitchen that smelled faintly of fresh bread in the mornings, and a quiet resolve that no one could break. People dismissed her because of her skin, her station, and her unassuming presence. But inside, she carried a mind that had been sharpened by years of observation, careful study, and quiet determination. On that morning, the billionaire's office buzzed with anticipation. His assistants whispered about a challenge he was planning, a test he believed no one could pass. Rumors spread quickly. He wanted someone clever enough to translate a rare, complicated phrase, something that had baffled even his brightest employees. To anyone else, the task seemed impossible, and he had made no secret of his intent to humiliate whoever dared step forward. As she wiped the polished floors outside the boardroom, she felt the eyes on her. Not the casual glance of acknowledgement, but the sharp, mocking stares of those who had already decided she would fail. And yet, there was a quiet thrill in the air, a sense that something remarkable could happen if the right person, the right mind, and the right courage intersected at just the right moment. In that vast hall of wealth and superiority, she was about to step into a moment that would test her, reveal the biases surrounding her, and set the stage for a confrontation that no one would forget. The boardroom was an arena disguised as an office. Sunlight spilled through the towering windows, glinting off polished surfaces and the expensive watches of those gathered. Laughter and whispers circled the room, each a tiny dagger aimed at her dignity. She stood near the edge, unnoticed by most, but under scrutiny from the one who mattered: the billionaire, who leaned back in his chair with an expression of condescension, certain she would falter. When he finally presented the challenge, the task seemed deceptively simple to the untrained eye: a phrase in an ancient, obscure language. But the complexity was layered, designed to trap, humiliate, and expose. His intention was clear. This was not a test of skill alone, but a public demonstration of his power over someone he believed inferior. Gasps and chuckles filled the room as others offered their skeptical advice from a safe distance, the air thick with expectation and silent prejudice. She felt the weight of centuries of assumptions pressing against her, the invisible history of bias that had followed her in every corridor, every workplace, every overlooked opportunity. Each mocking glance, each sneer, each whispered "she can't," echoed louder in her mind. But beneath the surface, determination was growing. Years of observation, of quiet study, of refusing to accept the limitations imposed on her, had prepared her for this. Time slowed as she approached the desk, her mind tracing patterns, decoding nuances, recognizing structures that no one else had. Sweat formed at the edges of her brow, not from fear, but from the intensity of focus. The billionaire leaned forward, smirk widening, his confidence in her failure palpable. He didn't see the calm calculation behind her eyes, the resilience that had been forged in silence and necessity. Minutes passed like hours. The room's tension grew unbearable. Whispers turned to murmurs of disbelief as she spoke, each syllable precise, deliberate, and perfectly rendered. The translation was flawless, each word a strike against the invisible chains of assumption, each sentence a quiet dismantling of the arrogance surrounding her. Eyes widened, breaths caught, and even the most skeptical onlookers felt a shift, subtle but undeniable in the atmosphere. What had begun as a simple challenge became a revelation. She was no longer just a janitor in the eyes of the room. She was a force, intellect, and poise unassailable. The billionaire's smirk faltered as he realized his miscalculation. In seeking to humiliate, he had underestimated the one person who possessed not only the knowledge to succeed, but the courage to seize the moment. The stage was set, tension now at its peak, for a conclusion that would leave everyone questioning what they thought they knew about power, intelligence, and the assumptions they carried silently but heavily in their hearts. The moment of truth unfolded like a storm breaking over still waters. The billionaire leaned back, a flicker of doubt crossing his face for the first time, though he tried to mask it with arrogance. The boardroom, once filled with laughter and smirks, now held a tense silence, each person waiting, watching, aware that the balance of power had shifted but unsure how far. As she completed the final phrase of the translation, a ripple of shock spread through the room. The precision, the elegance, the depth of understanding displayed in her work was undeniable. Every syllable struck with the weight of knowledge, skill, and quiet determination. The billionaire's expression tightened, his carefully curated image of superiority, built over decades, was cracking in front of the very person he had sought to diminish. In that instant, it became clear. This was more than a test of intellect. It was a confrontation with deeply rooted bias, a revelation that the assumptions of wealth and status could not define talent, brilliance, or worth. The eyes that had judged her, dismissed her, and underestimated her now widened with awe and unease. Every whisper of "she can't" turned inward, a silent reckoning with the arrogance that had clouded judgment for too long. The tension was palpable, the air heavy with the weight of revelation. The billionaire, caught off guard, realized he had miscalculated the magnitude of what he had witnessed. His challenge, intended as a spectacle of humiliation, had become a demonstration of unassailable mastery. The room, a theater of expectation and prejudice, now bore witness to the undeniable truth. Intellect, courage, and resilience are not dictated by appearances, social standing, or color of skin. Her victory was quiet, but profound. No applause was needed. The recognition in the eyes of those present, the stunned stillness, the invisible shifting of power, spoke louder than words ever could. In a single act, she had dismantled assumptions, shattered arrogance, and redefined the parameters of respect. What had begun as a simple translation challenge had become a watershed moment, one that would linger long after she left the room. A testament to the force of brilliance unbound by prejudice, a climax that resonated far beyond the walls of that skyscraper. The room remained silent long after she had finished. The billionaire, once a figure of untouchable authority, now stared in stunned recognition, forced to confront not only the limits of his own arrogance, but the prejudices that had guided him for years. Around her, colleagues and assistants who had laughed and doubted now saw her with a mix of awe and respect. What had begun as a simple test of skill had evolved into a profound lesson in humility, justice, and the danger of underestimating those society often overlooks. She returned to her work quietly, mop in hand, yet nothing would ever be the same. The invisible walls that had once confined her, the assumptions of others that had tried to define her worth had been shattered. In that moment, the janitor was no longer invisible. Her brilliance had spoken louder than privilege, louder than wealth, louder than bias. The phrase she translated became more than a challenge completed. It became a symbol of resilience, intellect, and the power of refusing to be underestimated. News of her accomplishment spread beyond the marble floors of the skyscraper. Stories circulated, inspiring others who had faced similar doubts, prejudice, or marginalization. She had demonstrated that talent, courage, and determination are forces that cannot be ignored, and that the structures of power often crumble when confronted by truth. In a world that so often judges by appearance, she had reminded everyone that brilliance does not wear a uniform, wealth does not guarantee wisdom, and the human spirit can triumph in unexpected ways. Her quiet victory carried a message far greater than the challenge itself. The barriers imposed by society, prejudice, and bias are not permanent. Recognition, respect, and justice are won by persistence, knowledge, and the courage to seize the moment, even when the odds are stacked against you. And while the billionaire would eventually resume his routines, he could never forget the lesson delivered by the woman he had tried to dismiss, an enduring reminder that true power lies not in mocking others but in the capacity to recognize, honor, and confront brilliance wherever it exists. In the end, the world learned a simple truth. The most underestimated can become the most extraordinary, and sometimes a single act of courage is enough to rewrite what everyone thought they knew about power, opportunity, and respect. Who then will you refuse to underestimate tomorrow?